And then I will start sharing my screen. Can everyone hear and see me all right? Just pop a message in the chat if there's any issues. I think you can drop like reactions or emojis, I think, as well. Yeah, okay, cool. I see Abian in the chat, giving a thumbs up. Yeah, we've got another person joining. Yeah, so I think we're 2 minutes in. I think we'll get started now. More people join, they'll just have to join midway through. Okay, cool. So yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome to this Applying to Engineering 2025 Oxbridge edition webinar. My name is Minaj, and I'll be conducting this webinar with you guys for the next half an hour or so. In the end, you'll get a chance to ask me some questions. So yeah, let's get started. So I'm just going to share my screen. I got a PowerPoint presentation here. So just bear with me while I quickly do that. Okay, cool. Can everyone see the screen? Just pop a thumbs up in the chat. Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's get started. So yeah, welcome again. This is a webinar for Applying to Engineering 2025, mainly focused on the Oxbridge admissions process. So once again, yeah, my name is Minaj, and I am one of the tutors at Oxbridge Mind. So let's get started. The first I'm going to begin a bit about myself. Oh, hold on one sec. I think I need to admit some more people. Doesn't do it automatically. Right. Yeah, so I'm going to get started by talking a bit about myself and my experience. So I am a Cambridge engineering graduate. So I got a Master's of Engineering degree, and I specialized in aerospace, mechanical, energy, and sustainability engineering. That's something I'll get more into in a bit, but essentially you can specialize in more than one area, with the Cambridge course being a general course. And I believe it's the same for Oxford as well. So a bit about my background in terms of secondary education. I attended state school. I studied further maths, chemistry, and physics. And in terms of the application process, at the time of when I applied to Cambridge, I actually sat the ENGA admission exam, right? Which is now, as you guys know, is the ESAT. For those of you who are thinking of applying to Cambridge engineering, for those of you who are thinking of applying to Oxford, you will actually sit something called the PAT. There'll be more about that in a slide. So in terms of interview preparation, I use multiple resources, including Isaac Physics and another website called I Want to Study Engineering. Again, there'll be more discussion based on that later on. So the reason I chose engineering is because I'm someone who sort of enjoyed applying maths and physics to solve problems. So I chose sort of engineering over, say, maths or physics as an abstract subject because I wanted to focus more on the application of those subjects. And I've been with Oxford Mind for sort of just over 2 years now, and my speciality is basically providing support for STEM subjects. So that includes, engineering, physics, maths. I even help with computer science as well. And that includes sort of helping with the whole application process, all the way from personal statement to admissions tests. So, including the ESAT, but also the TMUA, MAT, PAT, and so on. So these are just some of the admissions exams basically that you would sit depending on which subject you apply for across Cambridge and Oxford. So that's just a bit about myself. So let's get into more about the actual process. So the entry requirements overview. So I have information here about both Cambridge and Oxford because there are slight differences. But the one thing they do have in common is that the requirement, the A-level requirement is actually is the same for both. So typically speaking, they would expect you to have A star, A star, A at A level. Now, I imagine most of you are going to be in year 12 at the moment. So for you guys, it will be predicted grades. So as long as sort of your predicted grades are something around there, that would sort of give your application some good strength. If your predicted grade is sort of below this, then it makes things a bit more difficult. But of course, if you can show and demonstrate your ability through the interview or the admissions test, then that can sort of help you become a strong applicant regardless. But typically speaking, you want to have your predicted grades / achieved grades to be around the A star, A level. And of course, for those of you who are doing 4 A levels, which I imagine some of you will be, you can also get 4 A level offers. Me personally, I got a 4 A level offer. I actually had A star, A B offer for Cambridge engineering, and they also specified what grades they wanted in what subject. So the B, I could get a B in chemistry, and they didn't care basically. So and they wanted an A star in specifically physics and further maths, and an A in maths, which was a very interesting combo, but that's what it was for me. The required A levels, as you probably already know, is going to be maths and physics. And further maths is not required, but it is highly recommended. So that is something that I imagine a lot of you are doing that if you're thinking of applying for engineering. But it's if you don't have it, don't worry. It's not required, but it is helpful to have. In terms of ESAT, you don't need to actually know any further maths. They wouldn't test you on any further maths in the interview unless you've actually done it. And even then, they don't tend to really go into further maths from my experience. So yeah. So that's in terms of the exam grades, that's the main thing about that. And then we got the actual admissions test. Of course, before that, you got the UCAS application and the personal statement that you submit. But in terms of the main Oxbridge process, the real thing really begins when you sit the admissions test. So in terms of admissions test, depending on whether you're applying for Cambridge or Oxford, you're going to be either sitting the PAT or the ESAT. The PAT has been around since sort of the early 2000s. I think if you search online for the earliest paper, I think 2006 is probably the earliest you could find. The ESAT is sort of a rebrand of the ENGA. So the ENGA is what everyone would have been sitting since 2016 if they applied for engineering at Cambridge. And essentially what they've done is they've sort of rebranded it to the ESAT. The content is essentially the same. All they've done is taken out some of the content from the ENGA, some of the more advanced content like the physics content from the ENGA. But aside from that, content is the same. And, basically you can use the ENGA papers as practice for the ESAT. And for the PAT, it's just, it's still the same as it always was, apart from some structural changes, which we'll discuss in a bit. So key dates, ESAT is to be sat on the 15th and the 16th of October, 2024. So this is specifically for Oxbridge. Now, there is a later date if you're not applying for Oxbridge. So for example, if you're just applying for Imperial, then there is a later date. But obviously, if you're here in this webinar, I presume that you guys are all thinking about applying to Oxford or Cambridge. So if you are thinking of applying to Cambridge, then the date you're going to be sitting that is going to be 15th or 16th of October, which isn't very long away. It's less than 1.5 months away. And in terms of the PAT, the test date for that this year is 28th of October, 2024. And so both the ESAT and PAT are multiple choice exams. You'll see I put multiple choice exams now because the reason I put that is because the PAT, before this year, it has always been a mixture of multiple choice and longer written questions. So if you look at any past paper, you'll see a mixture of both. But from this year onwards, it's basically going to be all multiple choice. And the ENGA has always been multiple choice. And so the ESAT has carried on with that. So in terms of which sections you need to complete for engineering Cambridge, if you're sitting the ESAT, you're going to be doing the maths 1, maths 2, and the physics sections. And if you want to make the analogy to the ENGA, that is basically doing maths and physics in part A of section 1 of the ENGA, and the advanced maths in part B in section 1 of the ENGA. So basically, strictly speaking, for the ESAT, you don't need to worry about the advanced physics content in section 1 of the ENGA, and you don't need to worry about any of the physics in section 2 either. However, I would recommend, if you do get the time for you to tackle those questions, since it will just help you with your general problem solving. But strictly speaking, you don't need it. And then for PAT, it's always been a mixture of math and physics. So yeah, there's nothing new there. The only difference is, as I said, it's a structural change. It's all multiple choice now, as opposed to being a mixture of multiple choice and longer written questions. In terms of the ESAT and the Cambridge process, there is no specific pass mark. Obviously, the better you do, the more beneficial it will be for you. It will just help your application be stronger. But there isn't any specific pass mark. And so, every year there will be students ranging with different ESAT scores in the end, because what Cambridge does is they look at the whole application holistically. Whereas Oxford, on the other hand, they have an actual more sort of rigorous process. So they do have a cutoff mark usually for the PAT, and that will vary from year to year depending on how difficult, the PAT has been that particular year. But essentially, yeah, they do have a cutoff mark, and so it's quite strict in the sense that if you don't meet that cutoff mark, you'll be rejected. If you make it above that mark, then you'll get an invitation to interview. And then for Oxford, it's like an elimination round, right? So once you get to the interview, depending on your performance, you'll either get the offer or you won't. Whereas with Cambridge, it's more holistic, meaning that even after you do the interview, it's not an immediate sort of rejection / offer just based off how you do in the interview compared to other people doing the interview. They will look at your whole application and look at your whole application as a whole, and then see if you're sort of strong enough as a candidate. So that means that some people may get an offer who may have done very well in the interview, but perhaps not as well in the ESAT, and vice versa, So, and that's why I was saying, there is no pass mark for the ESAT, because they look at everything as a whole and make a decision based off that. So that's the admissions test side of things. And then, of course, we got the interview. So Oxbridge interviews are notoriously very sort of academic focused. So it's essentially like a dialogue between you and the interviewer, tackling some problems. For engineering or physics or maths, those kind of subjects, you're really going to be doing some problem solving based on maths and physics problems. So that's what you should be expecting. Your interview may begin with a bit of personal statement discussion. That's not unheard of, and it can be quite common. But the real, the real assessment is based on your performance with the actual academic problem solving. So, if you want to prepare for the interview, that's really where your focus should lie. And the interviews usually take place in November and December. Varies year to year, and it varies on the college you apply to as well. Some colleges might interview earlier, some colleges might interview a bit later. And another thing is, Oxbridge does have a pooling process in place, which means that, for example, first time you apply, you might interview at a location, at a college. You may not get the offer there, but if the university thinks you're strong enough, they might give you a second chance to interview at another college, for example. And if that goes well, you can still get an offer. So they do have a very rigorous process in place to ensure essentially fairness, regardless of what college you apply to. This is a very common question I get asked in terms of, what college should you choose to have the best chance? And a lot of people love to play the numbers game, and you can do that if you want. But the official statement from Cambridge, at least, is that if you go on their website, you'll see that it doesn't make a difference what college you apply to, because they basically look at all applicants who applied to the course, regardless of college, and compare everyone against each other before making offers. And the main piece of advice for the interview, I would say, is, apart from doing the practice for the physics and maths, is during the actual interview, always think out loud. It's meant to be an open dialogue between you and the interviewer, so they really want to see what you're thinking, how you're thinking, and that way they can gauge whether you're sort of going in the right direction with a given problem, or whether you may be struggling and maybe they need to redirect you to go in the right direction. So yeah, so that's something to bear in mind. So that's a bit more about the entry requirements. Just got the next slide. So subject overview. So a bit more about how the subject is taught and the assessment modes and so on. So teaching methods. So for both Cambridge and Oxford, as you may or may not know, Oxbridge has small group teaching. So Oxford calls it tutorials, Cambridge calls it supervisions. And typically, you'll have a few of those per week in small groups. So that could vary from 2 to 3 to 4 people per group. And, it really varies from year to year and exactly what a particular supervisor you've got. And this is just to accompany your usual lectures that you will go to. And yeah, this is like an Oxbridge thing that they do. And at Cambridge, if you're doing engineering, then you'll basically be tackling example papers in each of these supervisions. So example papers is like a fancy name that they give to essentially just tutorial papers for a given topic. So, you have a bunch of lectures on a particular topic area, and then you basically do some practice questions for that topic. And you'll find different practice questions assembled in different example papers. And in each supervision, you'll just go through a different example paper and address any queries with your supervisor that you have. So yeah, that's sort of the unique teaching method, you could say, for Oxbridge. And of course, just like any other university, you still have your lectures as well. And you get your timetable for start of each term. And usually, in the beginning, since you're just starting out, you will have quite a lot of lectures, since you're sort of building the foundational knowledge up. And typically in the later years, as you're going towards your final year and so on, depending on the exact modules you're doing, you may have like less lectures compared to first and second year, because typically by then you've specialized and you're doing a lot more independent work as well. And as well as lectures, you also got it's engineering, right? It's a practical subject, so you will have sort of small group project work and lab work and other practical work that you'll be doing as well. So assessment modes. So the major assessment mode is going to be written exams, just like doing your A-levels and the exams you sit at the end of year 13. Similar to that, you'll be doing written examinations at the end of each academic year. And if you want to know more about that, you can just go onto the Oxford or Cambridge website and just look at the engineering course. And if you look at assessment structure, you will see like how many exams you will do at the end of each year and so on. So for Cambridge specifically, in the first year, you'll be doing 4 main exams at the end. And they're quite long, these exams, but I think only because you're doing 4 papers, so there's a lot of content to cover. But in the later years, you do more papers, and each of them takes less time. And you can also get assessed through practical work, right? So especially for Cambridge in your first year and also in your second year, you're going to be doing a lot of different lab work for different subjects, because both the Cambridge and Oxford course, they are general courses, which are, as you can see, I mentioned, they're right at the end. But they are general courses, which means that especially in your first 2 years, you're going to be tackling all sorts of different engineering disciplines. So you're going to be covering a lot of content, and there's a lot of lab work to accompany that. So you'll be doing a lot of that and a lot of lab reports as well, which you'll be assessed on. And also you can get some coursework modules as well. This is true for Cambridge, especially sort of in the final 2 years. You can pick coursework modules, but largely speaking, a lot of them will still be examination based. And then also there's the final year project report, which you will do when you do your masters, which is going to be your 4th year. Nature of the subject, as I mentioned, engineering at both Cambridge and Oxford is a general course. Okay, so you get a nice foundational base for all the different disciplines of engineering in the beginning, first 2 years, and then you can make a decision on what you want to specialize in the final 2 years. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. And so what to do now if you're in this position? Well, first thing, it seems obvious, right? But you have to choose between Cambridge and Oxford, because you can only apply to one of them at a given academic year. So that's really up to you. It's based on your preference. It can be based on different variables, including the exact course structure. It could be based on location, etc. It's personal to everyone. So that's something you need to decide on. And also you might want to consider the fact that, you're going to be doing different admissions tests as well, and that might have a bearing on your decision. So for example, if you feel like you may do better in the ESAT or the PAT, that might dictate your decision as well. You know. So yeah, and in terms of deadline, obviously the UCAS application deadline is upcoming for Oxbridge, which is 15th of October, just like every year. Ideally, you want to be getting it submitted a bit earlier than that. You don't want to sort of do it right at the end in case there's any issues. And then yeah, you're just going to be in the meantime, as you're hopefully if you've done your personal statement, that's great. If you're still doing it, get that done as soon as you can. And alongside that, keep preparing for the admissions test. So that will be the ESAT if you're going for Cambridge, or the PAT if you're going for Oxford. And alongside that as well, if you're happy with sort of your preparation already for ESAT and PAT, you can start thinking about a bit of interview prep. But your main priority should be the admissions test. Once that is done, you can put all your focus in on the interview. And in terms of interview resources, I would recommend two websites which have a lot of good maths and physics problems that you can have a go at, and that will just help you build your problem-solving portfolio for the interview. So Isaac Physics, some of you may have used, you may be using it already, or you may have heard of it. And the other one is I Want to Study Engineering. I think the exact site is iwanttostudyengineering.org with the dashes, as you can see in the PowerPoint. And then obviously once you do that, that's basically it. All you have to do then is just wait for an outcome. There's not really much else you can do after that except just wait. It's the period that everyone dreads when you have to find out the outcome. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers all of that. And final thing is Oxbridge Mind, we offer a lot of different one-to-one tutoring packages to help you guys with the whole admissions process. And this ranges from 5 hours to even some, 100 hours, although you probably, depending on your needs, you can choose what package is best for you. And we do also offer online group learning for specific Oxbridge entrance exams. And so for you guys, we are doing an ESAT live day on 14th of September. So you can find more information about that on the site. And this is specifically for the physics and maths, which is, of course, what you guys will be doing if you're thinking of applying for engineering. There is another ESAT day for chemistry and biology, which is more for the natural sciences people. And yeah, I think that pretty much leads us to the end. So we still got some time, 7 minutes or so. So this is an open floor. If anyone got any questions, feel free to ask another time. Or you can just ask in the chat as well if you don't want to speak. So I can already see a question asked in the chat by Mary. So, someone else has just joined. Yeah, so Mary says, if you finished all the papers for the ENGA, what other websites / stuff would you do in preparation for the ESA? Yeah, so if you finish all the ENGA papers, I would recommend you to look at other admissions tests that will sort of boost your problem solving for physics and maths. So you can even look at some PAT papers. TMUA papers are great. Even MAT papers for multiple choice maths problems, even though they're a bit more difficult than what you'll get in the ESA, it's still very good practice. So yeah. Okay. There's another question here. Are there any access and outreach programs offered by Oxbridge that can benefit UCAS application, lower the A-level requirements? So typically speaking, they don't lower your entrance requirements by any way. The A entrance requirement in terms of A levels, that is pretty much always going to be the case. That's like a general entry requirement. Obviously, it varies from student to student. But they can see obviously your sort of background and in terms of what school you went to and so on. So they will take into account if you went into like a perhaps not a very good school, perhaps in terms of performance, but then if you've really done well, that will be advantageous for you because you've shown that you've got an academic sort of aptitude, right? So yeah, hopefully that answers that. Another question. How do you boost your knowledge and understanding for the ESATs? Is it just picking up whatever tricks you can find from past papers, or is it some kind of book / resource? Okay. Yeah, so That's a very good question. I think a lot of people that usually find with the content once you've gone through the syllabus, the main thing with the ESAT is it's a very difficult exam because of the time constraint, and I think a lot of you would agree with that if you've done the Younger papers under time conditions. It's not meant to be really easy in terms of the timing, and they've done that deliberately to see how quickly you can solve things. So a lot of it comes down to strategy and being able to be strategic with your answer option. So that might mean like, not, you shouldn't always think that you need to derive the complete solution for every single question you're tackling. And sometimes there's easy and quicker ways. You might be able to estimate the solution. And in some cases, it may even be worth you eliminating answers and improving your chances of an educated guess instead of wasting so much time on a given problem. So, but definitely the main point of contact would be just doing the past papers and learning from those and just doing them on the time conditions. As cliche as that sounds, that's what's going to really help you. In terms of books and resources, there are ones you can buy on like Amazon and so on, but honestly, you don't need it. If you feel like you've done everything and you've done all the Younger papers, you've looked at loads of PAT resources, etc., then in that case, if you want like an additional question bank, you can do that. And when we do past papers and we come across questions, we can solve. Best way to learn the solution. Yeah, so that comes down to actually, just break it down and try to understand, you should never memorize a solution. I would never recommend that. It's one of those things where you should really try to understand. If you should look at the solution and try to understand what they're doing. Once you understand it, that should be good enough, because if you then get something similar, you should get eureka moments in like, okay, I did something similar to this and I know how to do this now. If there's a question that you're really stumped on and the solution doesn't make sense, you should consult with someone like a tutor or even a teacher so that they can explain to you how to do a given problem. Chemistry, yeah, chemistry wasn't really relevant at all. So when you apply, are they actually interested in how much you know about engineering and technology or history? In the interview, they may ask you some things about your interests. They don't expect you to have like a whole crash course on like the history of engineering. It's more so just to showcase a bit of interest and motivation that you have for the subject. But the real assessment is just with the actual problems and problem solving, because they know people come from different backgrounds. So some people this may be the first sort of opportunity for someone to really get to grips with engineering. Some other people may have had a lot of work experience, perhaps in some different fields. So people have different privileges. So to make it fair, that the real assessment is only with the actual problem solving. Is further maths a large part of the ESAT? No, further maths is not required for the ESAT. Wider reading, there isn't anything required. I would only do a wider reading if you're actually really interested in like a particular topic area. Like for example, you could read like a book you're interested in, etc. Sorry if I've missed anyone, by the way. If I've missed your comment, feel free to type it again. But I'm trying to address all the different questions you guys are asking. How soon should we start practicing past papers in school? You should start now. If you haven't done so already, you should definitely start now. There's not long left, and you should try to ideally get through all the papers. If your school isn't really helping with that, you will have to do a lot of independent work, and then if you can get a tutor on board, that's good as well. So Oxbridge Mind is a perfect platform for you to get help on that. I'm helping a lot of students at the moment with ESAT prep as well. Are there interesting projects, much more academics reading? Well, these are all super curricular activities, right? So anything you've done, whether that be a project, extra reading, everything is nice to see, right? It shows that you've got extra interest within engineering. So there isn't anything that carries more weighting than the other. It's just like a bigger piece of the pie, if you will. So whatever you have done, just emphasize that in the personal statement. Yeah, in the interview, they do typically give you a chance in the end to ask a question. And there is no right or wrong questions to ask. If you have a genuine question about the course, about university life, you can do that. Or if you want to ask something very technical, you can do that as well. Just try not to be too sort of cliche with it. And definitely don't ask something for the sake of asking. Yeah. This person I'm particularly worried about more grades. Oh, I just realized I'm running a bit over time. So I think yeah, because I see the last question here about computer science. There will be a computer science webinar that should happen now. I don't and yeah, but I'll just try to answer the last few real quick. Personal statement. Wait. Yeah, Cambridge and Oxford. In all honesty, they there needs to be a certain level of interest within the subject, but aside from that, they don't care too much about your extracurriculars or anything like that. It's more so your academic ability. Um, yes, other university choices. I applied to Imperial. What was it? Imperial, Warwick, Durham, and Bristol. I think. Yeah. Yes, that's right. For Cambridge, it's more holistic, but for Oxford, it is more like an elimination process. Um, should we cover the entire spec of all three courses? What do you mean by all three courses? You mean all three sections? Like maths one, maths two, physics. Yeah, I mean, ideally, yeah, you should do that just to make sure you know all the content, and then just basically spam the papers, do all the papers. You're very welcome, guys. So yeah, thanks for all the questions. Hope you found the webinar useful. Um, I will have to end it here because there is supposed to be another webinar now about computer science. So I appreciate that some of you have joined already about computer science, and I think yeah, Timothy's here to take over, and yeah, very best of luck. I'll leave the floor to you. Uh, yeah, I think people can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Are you able to allow me to share my screen?
I've made you co-host, so it should, yeah, because I think initially I was made co-host and someone needs to host it, so I don't know. I
Oh,
could
okay, okay.
end the meeting, so I'm just staying in the meeting and I made you co-host.
Yeah, pause recording. Okay, I have stopped. Pause the.
It should let you share your screen, I think.
Okay. Where shall I share my screen? I have options to resume recording, but I cannot share the screen.
Okay, let me see if I can do something about that. I'll just make you host, I think, but that should hopefully fix it.
Okay. Actually, will it be easier if you can help me share the screen, because I already pasted the docs inside. Is that easier?
Oh, you want me to share it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It won't let me access it. It says access denied. You need to make it public, I think.
Okay. Yep. Try again. I think it should be okay.
Yeah, okay, that works. Sick. Right. Can you guys see that?
Right. Cool. Yep. I hope everyone can hear me now. Yep. All right. Thank you. Yep. So, my name is Timothy, and okay. Yep. So my name is Timothy, and I studied computer science at Cambridge. I have done my BA and Master of Engineering. Currently, I'm working as a trader for a bank in London. My A level was 3A stars. I've been tutoring with Oxbridge Mine for 3 years, but in general, I've been tutoring Oxbridge applicants for the last 7 years, since 2017. My specialization is in computer science, obviously, and occasionally I also tutors applicants for math and physics or natural science at Cambridge as well. Usually, I can do general consultations from personal statement review to entrance exams prep and interview preparations. Okay, admit a new trainer. So the minimum offer level for computer science at Oxbridge is 2A stars and an A, which is on the website. But truth to be told, they do have some disclaimer there. So around 80 to 85% of the students will get 3A stars. So I think ideally you should also aim for 3A stars. For computer science, math, physics, and CS background are preferred. So a lot of students will have math for the maths and physics, and a handful of them will do math for the math and computing um, at A levels. Right. So if you read on the website, it also says that prior knowledge to computer science is not a prerequisite, but I've spoken with a lot of interviewers who were like director of studies when I was studying in there, and asked them what they feel about just being able to solve a lot of good math problems. So what they're trying to say was that, especially after COVID, right? During COVID, a lot of people stay at home and create a lot of content on YouTube, and there will be a lot of resources online as well. So it's a bit hard to say that you're really interested in the subject without actually go and do something about it, like read up a little bit, learn a little bit of programming, learning Python, for example. So although they say computer science knowledge is not required, I think it's recommend to really go and explore what you want to do um, if you're applying to computer science. In terms of entry exams, the Cambridge will have a TMUA, which will happen next month, mid of October, so 15 and 16, and and optional for Peterhouse and Trinity, which are the two colleges at Cambridge. You have to sit for the CSAT as well, which is early December, usually 1 or 2 days before your interview. In terms of interview, you'll be sitting 2 45 minutes interview, and it happens in the first week of December. So if you're selected, you will be notified usually by the end of November. And I think nowadays, in the last year, they have already resumed on-site interviews. So if you're in the UK, you will be invited to Cambridge or Oxford for the interview, and if you are overseas, you do the interview online. Right. In terms of the subject overviews at Cambridge, the magic number is 4. It's not 42, if you know what I mean. But yeah. So in terms of the subjects in the first year and second year, and even in the final year as well, you will sit for generally for 4 papers. And during that 4 papers, it covers different aspects of computer science. So probably ranging from programming to hardware to theory, so on and so forth. And across the 4 papers, you do 3 lectures a week per paper, so 12 lectures a week plus 4 supervisions for that 4 papers specifically weekly. And you're expected to spend at least 8 hours per paper per week, right? Usually about 4 to 5 hours to solve the example problems, and another 3 hours to read up more on the content, because usually what you have been taught in at university will be things that are at the surface level, and you really need to dig and play around. I mean, if you are coding, right, you will need time to break your own code, and by doing so you learn a lot more than you just finish the normal stuff. In terms of assessment, you have a little bit of practical work as well, but the main focus will be the exams that's going to happen every May. It will be 3-hour exams for each of the papers. So again, 4 times 3 papers. And the specific thing about Cambridge and Oxford curriculum as well is very theoretical and very heavy, because you are learning all aspects of computer science within 8 weeks and 3 terms. Usually it'll be 2.5 terms, because by the end of the third term you'll already be preparing for your exams already. So a lot of things to cover, and it's not something that I mean, a lot of people will have a lot of people will be strong in certain area of computer science, but you also want to they also want to develop you all rounded, at least in the first 2 years. So that's why you also cover things like theory, very theoretical things on how you developed a programming language as well, for example. So um we'll come to this point in a minute when we talks about the interview and the personal statement, but keep in mind that the course is very theoretical. um, it it gives you some opportunity here and there to be a bit more practical to get a bit more real life experience. However, I think the onus is still on you to really do projects outside of universities, and also looking for job opportunities to really learn how computer science is applied in the real industry. Okay, so in preparations for computer science, what you need to do, usually, I mean, I'm the advocate of, starting things early, and you better be over prepared than under prepared, right? So you get your basics right early. So let's say if you're applying this for entry in 2025, then we don't have a lot of time. But let's say if you want to thinking of applying for next year, when you learn a subject, when you learn any new topics, especially in mathematics, you learn it well. You take note of all the requirements, all the key things about the subjects, about the topics, right? And I would recommend usually 4 months to prepare. So let's say the personal statement and the TMUA is due in October, so you should ideally start in June, and then the interview is in December. So you should start around now. I mean, it's a bit hard to say because if you have not submitted your personal statement and you have not sat for the entrance exam, you're not sure if you're invited to the interview. But always prepare for like the little things, how to address, how to approach a difficult problems in your school exams, in your school work, right? Is also a small step to prepare for the interview as well. You need to choose the university and college, and you can do so by attending open houses. Some colleges organize open house for you to come. I think there is a bit of a statistic in terms of like the number of applicants to certain colleges. Some colleges are a bit more competitive to the others. So I think it does matters somewhat on your choice of college, depending on how you think you are among certain peers. Let's say if you're like top your school, then you can feel a bit more confident applying to more popular colleges like Trinity or Churchill or Queen's. Let's say if you're like maybe just the top 5%, you would want to be a bit safer and apply for other colleges that are not in the top popular choices at Cambridge, and likewise at Oxford, right? And especially if you're applying to uh, Cambridge, Trinity, and Peterhouse, which are two Cambridge colleges, you are required to sit for the CSAT as well, and you'll be notified if you are invited to the interview. So what this CSAT is another exams, or rather another test that they would do usually one day or a few days before your interview. And originally it was designed to be um, an equivalent of an interview as well. So the interview, traditionally it requires you to speak out loud, as Ahmed has mentioned. If you join him early on, the interview required you to speak out loud and explain things as you go along. However, I think most of us, we were trained in a sense that we have been spending like our last 12 years sitting exams in quiet hall, right? We're not supposed to talk during exams, stuff like that. So um, originally the CSAT was designed for a lot of students who are still coping to fit with the interview kind of style, where you need to speak during thinking, during your problem solving, which is not comfortable. However, there were changes here and there. So now only two colleges still adopt these exams, which present another opportunities for you to demonstrate your abilities to think, because the problems in the CSAT is very similar to the interview problems, in the sense that it doesn't require knowledge that is beyond the A-level syllabus, that is beyond something that you know, but it requires you to be able to use those knowledge that you have learned in school in a more critical way, combining them and solve the problems. So in it tests you a lot on problem solving skills, and the questions are also ranging across various topics. So let's say if you're not, and you're able to choose what questions that you attempt to your strength. Right? Some people are stronger in, for example, algebraic. Some are stronger in combinatorics, for example. So you can choose the questions to your strength and attempt the questions. And then interview will happen the first week of December. So this is like the end of the first term in Oxbridge, and they will the director of studies and the fellows at the college will do the interviews, and then they'll go for Christmas break. In terms of reading, I think as a good start, you could try Cambridge suggested reading list. One of the book is called the Omnibus in Computer Science. What it does is it gives you about 60s or 66 ideas that are interesting and that are crucial in computer science. And what it does, it doesn't, I mean, you're not expect to understand all the things that are presented in the book, but the book will give you an idea of what are you going to face when you study computer science, right? So you're going to study programming, you're going to study theory, you're going to study hardware stuff, right? So a lot of things, a lot of areas for you to explore, and you read the book and then you go on, and let's say this idea is very interesting to you, you do your own research, you Google, you learn a bit more, you find more resources to understand that topic specifically. So yeah, it gives you a good start into exploring the subject at university, right? So back to the point early on when I say the course at Cambridge was very theoretical and it covers all aspects of computer science. It boils down to uh, the interview. It has a great link to the personal statement as well as the interview, in the sense that because um, a lot of people, a lot of students, they just maybe they just do a bit of math and they're like, okay, I want to study computer science because I don't know, you heard that AI is now a big thing and so on and so forth, but you don't really do a lot of research your own. And when they actually do the course, they gave up halfway because a lot of things are very difficult and they only like, for example, graphics. They only like one aspect of computer science and they cannot persevere through the rest of the subject. So that's what the admission tutors don't want, right? So in your personal statement, I think they are looking for a little bit of your characteristic, and especially the perseverance, right? So you don't just show off in your personal statement things like, I achieved this award, I achieved that award, I joined that summer camp, I joined that competitions, right? What they want to see is, again, your characteristic and your perseverance. So let's say instead of saying I attend math Olympiads, for example. You tell them during that training for the Olympiads, what are the new things that you have learned, right? And when you learn those new things, where you struggled, right? And you definitely struggled with some of the new ideas, right? So when you struggle, what have you done to overcome that? Did you find a book to read? Did you research your own online? Did you talk to your teachers? Did you spend extra time after school to research about it, right? So they want to see those actions that you take to overcome the challenge, right? You don't need to like understand like everything about computer science before you apply, but you need to show some interest, you need to show some perseverance. Yeah, so that's I think is the key for the personal statement. And then moving on to the interview and how you prepare for it early on. It's not about, so the interview, again, as I mentioned, is not about testing how much beyond the syllabus but they will test you on, are you able to use what you have learned in school to solve a problem that you have not seen before? right? And that's exactly what you're going to do later on in life, right? You learn a couple of knowledge from computer science, and then you go on in life and you solve problems that you have not seen before. How would you apply those knowledge? So that's what they are looking for. So when you're solving problems, I mean, you're solving problems in the ESAT or in the TMUA or in the MAT, whatever it is, right? The key things to improve from doing the questions is always have a set of steps that you're going to do, right? First is you read the questions carefully, right? That's the most fundamental thing. You need to understand what they give you, the informations that they give you, and what you're required to solve, right? So on one hand is the things that you have, and on the other hand is the thing that you have to solve. Imagine it's like picking a lock, right? You have like a lock and you have a toolkit, a set of toolkits. You're trying to unlock the lock, right? And then you try to bridge the gap between the two. So you go step by step. So you break down the problem into smaller problems, and then you move from the tools to see if you're able to combine those two to some other advanced tool, for example. And that's the the skill that you can start developing from now without really going to like further topics. You can do it really in your like daily school examples and school problems, right? Start from the easier one, and then once you're familiar with the steps, you do for harder problems. All right, so that's a kind of like um a brief info about Cambridge, and we do run online group learning for the TMUA or the MAT on these two Sundays, 15th of September and 22nd of September. Yeah, so I think that's mostly it. So maybe I open the time for Q&A if anyone wants to ask questions. Uh, you take at A level if you don't mind. So I take math for the maths and physics. I also take chemistry, but I think that's not really relevant. Is not having work uh, or volunteer experience going to hurt your chance of getting in? Absolutely not. I think you can I think you can I mean, volunteer experience, if you're talking about like volunteer to do some real work about computer science, I don't think that's a must, but I would recommend you to do some very small programming projects. I mean, you can easily learn Python nowadays. You can make like a mini chatbot, do a little bit of things here and there using Python, which is easier to learn than, for example, C++ or Java. So definitely mini projects are counted towards your application, and depending on how you write them in your personal statement as well, you could easily do some problems like some mini projects, and you struggle with certain ideas, and then you do some stuff that overcome that things, and it also adds to the thing that they are looking for. Skills that I think that are most necessary for computer science at universities, obviously a lot of things I can say in general is problem solving skills, but the more important one is to self explore new ideas. So let's say if you are interested in certain things, right? You could immediately Google it, right? Google about that and then learn more about it. And let's say if it's programming related, you could really take your PC or your laptop to work like a quick code to solve it using the coding. And especially for computer science, when you join, not probably not now, but when you learned a little bit more about the subjects, you will have a different way of thinking compared to, like, say, someone that who's just doing like pure math. Because for math, right, sometimes you have formulas and you can calculate. For example, I would say the Fibonacci, you have a formula to calculate it exactly. But in computer science, you have constraints about resource, you have constraints about times, you have constraints about how computer can represent your numbers. So a lot of things you can't do exactly with computers, so you have to think in terms of approximations. um, right, so I think that's the key skills for a computer scientist. uh, slide to presentations links above. Okay, I think there is a YouTube. uh, yeah, I think it was streamed on YouTube if you want to revisit it. Does it affect if work experience is virtual or in person? It doesn't really matter. And again, when I remember when I talked about the personal statement, right? So let's say if you do, even if it's virtual or in person, it doesn't really matter, right? What matters is what have you done during that work experience, and what you write. Obviously, what you tell your admission tutors in your personal statement. So let's say if you have a work experience, you could tell in your personal statement that you had that experience. What have you done during that? Any problems that you encounters, and how you overcome that challenges. So that's the key things I want to emphasize. Would not taking further maths heavily hurt my chances of entering to Oxbridge? If so, would it be better to consider other universities? So other universities, I mean, you have five choices for your UCAS, and Oxbridge is only one of them. So definitely you have other four choices, and one or two of them should be your safer choices. Probably the fourth and the fifth, and then first is for Oxbridge, second is usually Imperials or maybe Warwick, some of the top school in the Russell groups, and then it goes down towards your safer choice. Um, would not taking further maths heavily hurt your chances? I would say no, but students who did further maths have a bit of advantage, in the sense that just think of it like you're picking a lock, right? And if you do maths, you have um you have these sets of tools, and then if you do further maths, you have like an extra few tools that you can use. Obviously, if you are saying in your, because Cambridge have a separate application portal which is called COPA, which is Cambridge Online Portal Applications, where you will fill in the subjects that you have done, and what sort of topics that you have covered up until your point of interview, right? So they know that, let's say they know that you don't take further maths, they wouldn't ask um, anything that requires further maths knowledge to be able to solve. But yeah, slightly advantage for those who take further math is because, let's say if you have seen problems, a bit more problems than someone who just did math, right? You have a bit of experience per se, but they will definitely not testing you on things that you haven't learned. Yeah, so wouldn't hurt, but good to have and good to know. If I were interested with working with quantum computers, would it be better to take physics or CS? I think it's a difficult question to say, because let's say if you're working with quantum computers, what exactly are you working with? Are you working with the problems that quantum computers are solving, or you're interested in working on how to make the quantum computers, right? How to build the quantum computers, and it yeah, it depends on your answers to that, whether you want to take physics or CS. And obviously you're not just taking, let's say if you're taking physics, you're not just doing quantum mechanics and stuff, you are doing other things as well, right? So that's also another thing to consider, right? Because it's not just, you take physics and you do quantum computers, quantum mechanics, or you take CS and you do quantum computing, right? So if you're interested in, like, say for example, quantum cryptography, security stuff, definitely go for the CS route. And if you're interested in building like your quantum computers, how do you build your qubit and stuff like that, then you take physics. Okay, any other questions? How high should you score in the TMUA? I mean, the TMUA and the MAT, truth to be told, they are deselection tests, in the sense that you sit it before you are invited to the interview. So the purpose of the tests um, are to deselect the candidates who are not, like, if you can't really get, maybe say for example 50% of the TMUA, then it's low chance that you can get questions at the interview. So the ideal answer is as high as you can. um the not so ideal answers is, it's a bit of a bell curve, and they probably will select the top 70th percentile. So yeah, I mean, you should try to aim as much as you can, but obviously they will have the different scores every year, and then you're trying to look for the cutoff point is your 70th percentile. If I were to get an A in math A level in year 12, would I need to resit to get into Oxford? um this one I'm not sure. I think it's a combinations of how you perform at your interview as well. So let's say if they are not really sure about your ability after the interview, so perhaps you come in at the interview, you're able to get somewhere, they give you quite a few hints, and you're able to get the questions, then obviously they are looking at a stars conditions, right? But if they are sure that you can solve the problems with ease, the requirement for your offer will be, maybe A would work. So it's not a definite answers. And usually when you get your offer and then you get your A level results, there is also not often, but there's also a chance where you can just submit your grades, and they are a little bit easy on you on those. And I guess it depends on how you perform in the interview. Do you have any advice for studying for both the TMUA and the MAT? Should you prioritize one test over the other or trying to find resources that cover both style or questions? So I think usually you just need to sit for one test, depending on whether you apply to Oxford or Cambridge or Imperial, and the questions are quite similar in style. They are multiple choice questions. Um, yeah, so I think you can just do the test that you will actually sitting for, and once you run out of questions for that, from past papers, you can use the other test as a backup, to solve extra problems. Okay, maybe I take one or two more questions.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello. Yep, I can hear you.
Yes, I do have a question. I'm an international student, and I previously studied in a university in China, like the Chinese curriculum,
Yep.
and I dropped out, and my GPA when I dropped out wasn't that good.
Mm.
They, when I applied to Cambridge, for example, would I be required to like show them, or would it appear in my background, and would it hurt my application?
uh I think, so how about your pre-university's grade?
Like my grades weren't that bad, but my GPA was around 2.6. But I was studying in Mandarin. Would that
Okay.
count?
It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. Again, same as Ahmed mentioned earlier. I think they will, as far as they can, they will consider your applications holistically, right? So, when you apply to the UCAS, when you key in your grade, um, and you do your personal statement, definitely it is a bit different from the normal route where candidates finish high school and then apply to maybe in year 12 and then um, apply to Cambridge. There are candidates from international candidates where they usually do the first year uni, and then you applied. Then in your personal statement you could focus a little bit more on, first of all, why would you want to do so, right? Why would you not satisfied with the university that you're in and you want to apply to Cambridge? Is a bit more different than, let's say if you're still in high school and you want to apply to uni, is a bit more sensible than, you want to explain yourself first of all. And then second of all is, let's say your grades is not great. Is there a reason that is not great? For example, because you don't like the way the school is teaching, and you don't spend a lot of time, the school is teaching and examining, right? Like maybe too regurgitating a lot of things, you don't like it. So you don't spend a lot of effort doing so, revising for those exams, but instead you went on to do your own projects or your own, some students do their own startups, mini startups, stuff, things like that. So that's the second thing, right? So is there an explanation for the grade that's not so flying colors, right? That's the second thing. Yeah, and then the third thing is, let's say if the two things that you did, your personal statement and um, gives the admission tutors an impression that, okay, this candidate is a potential candidate. The grade doesn't say enough about her potential or her abilities. Then they will invite you for an interview, and that's your third chance where where they give you the actual opportunity to demonstrate your problem solvings. And I think that when you get to that stage, then the score or your grades doesn't matter that much anymore. But to get there, I mean, you need to do a little bit more work on your personal statement as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I dropped my email there. If you have any more questions specifically to computer science, think of it now. I'm trying my best to I'll try my best to answer via email. With that, thank you all for joining, and I hope the sessions is useful. Bye bye.